It sounds a little bit weird. It sounds a little bit woo-woo. If you've never heard the term limerence, it may sound like fairy fart, but it actually is just a mindset. It's a mental state of being that is defined by incredibly strong, obsessive infatuation with another human being. Limerence happens in all shapes and forms and does not have to come from both partners. You can develop limerence all by yourself with a person that you've never even touched, that you've never even spoken to in real life. Essentially, a person that doesn't even know you exist. You can fall into limerence with somebody that is highly inappropriate. Let's say a teacher-student relationship, a doctor-patient relationship, right? You can fall into limerence when it comes to famous people, VIPs, everybody that's like star actors, musicians, or whatnot. But you can also fall into limerence with actual people that you have actual relationships with. So it really exists in all the way, shapes, and forms. If you have or experience or fall into or currently are in limerence, all by yourself, where it is not reciprocated by the other person, then it kind of lasts not as long and is not as crazily intense as it is when it is actually reciprocated by the other person. A few examples for limerence would be like, this is like the standard go-to thing. If we look at people who are in a kind of stagnant relationship, they have been married to somebody or seriously committed to somebody for a very long time, but there's just stagnancy. Those people, even though they have their life figured out and they have their ducks in a row and their shit together, they feel like the flame has gone out, the spark is lost, there's just nothing really going on there anymore. And then these people often start having affairs with a limerence lover, and they do the most craziest, insane shit in the universe. They leave their partner, they leave their children. Often, I don't know why it is like that, but I've often seen it in especially males, men, married men with children, with established families of a higher age. So let's say in their 40s, 50s, 60s, then massively, tremendously falling in love, falling into this extreme version of infatuation with a much, 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 severely much younger partner. That is kind of the classic go-to limerence lovers relationship. These men, I don't mean to say that it doesn't happen to women. It also happens to women, but more so, like I would say the example that I'm talking about right now, it's like the classic textbook standard limerence thing, relationship, right? They leave their families, they drop out of everything just to be with this insanely young other person. They are obsessed with this person. They feel like they have their life back. They feel younger, they feel energized. They are massively obsessed with that person and they think that's it, that's the one. And then usually at some point in time they realize what they've done, what they've lost, and then they fall either into depression or come crawling back. Because limerence is something that by nature has an expiration date, and everybody who has ever been in limerence is completely denying this. Every single one who is infatuated in that to that high, crazy degree amount with another person believes that their relationship is different, is special, it's the one that's gonna last, it is mutual, and it's the love of their life. But limerence has an expiration date by nature, it's biological, and usually those relationships fall apart after 3 months to up to 2 years, but that's like rare. Usually, I would say the standard is a few months, 3 to 6 months, and then it dies out. And this is just our biological programming, because limerence puts us into stagnation. It makes us abandon our own needs. I think the reason why the question of what is the difference between limerence and manifesting NSP came up, because a lot of these manifestation techniques, a lot of these visualizations, daydreaming, affirmations, being slightly delusional towards the actual lived reality, current reality, can feel like that, right? I'm just gonna read what I wrote down. Maybe it makes sense to you. First off, in limerence, in this state, your emotional state, your emotional level of contentment is dependent on the other person. So you are, without the other person, on edge, you are anxious, you are not happy, and you start kind of consuming the other person, whether this is in real life by touching, being with them, spending time with them, or whether it is when you have a massive infatuation crush on somebody online or on a star or somebody, whatever, somebody that is like physically or emotionally unavailable to you, right? You would overconsume content with them. You would go crazy about stalking their social media. You would go crazy about watching every single interview they've ever given in their entire life. You go stalk their ex relationships, their current relationships. You know essentially everything about this person. And if you are not checking up on them, if you're not consuming any form of content or actual experience with that person, you feel drained, you feel empty, and you need the other person's love. It's kind of like limerence is like love addiction to a specific individual. That's like potentially the best way I can describe it. You have an intense longing for reciprocation of love from that other person, and if you do not get this back, you quite frankly lose yourself in that. This is where, if you already have people-pleasing tendencies, where you start seriously sacrificing yourself for the other person. That also includes, that I already write that down, yeah. I wrote it down that way. I change myself so that I will suit you. You become happy with me. I think about you all of the time, and I become what I assume you want me to be so that I can secure my point, my status in your life. It is a lot fear-based. This is what I think a lot of you guys have seen this. Limerence is way, way, way more common than we acknowledge. I believe I mentioned that like 14 minutes ago in the beginning of this video. But when you see those relationships that happen overnight, seemingly, where two people who don't know each other, who do not have any history, or who have never spent enough time with one another to justify that level of obsession, right? When they get together overnight, they hang out every single day, they maybe move in incredibly quickly after a few days or a week or whatnot. They maybe get engaged incredibly fast. They may get, I don't know, married in Vegas overnight, just like that. If you see this, and if you then see that the person that you knew, and I think I'm reconnected. I don't know where I was cut off, so I'm just going to repeat real quickly what I said. Let's say you have a friend, and that friend of yours is in a limerence relationship with somebody else. You know your friend, you know their style, you know how they dress, you know their preferences, you know their character. And seemingly overnight, they completely change. They literally lose themselves in the other person. They start dyeing their hair, cutting their hair according to what they believe their partner wants, likes, prefers, right? They start changing the way they dress. They start changing the way they act. They start changing their own opinions. And they start becoming that weird thing that they think their partner wants and loves. When we are in limerence, we are constantly afraid of losing the other person. Whether this is your actual lover, your actual partner, and you are in a mutual relationship with them, or whether it's a figment of your imagination with somebody who is online, somebody that is emotional and geographically even unavailable to you, right? It doesn't matter whether the person knows you or not, but it's even stronger and more intense and dies out a little bit faster, honestly. Or like, not dies out, but shit hits the fan sooner when you have it with two people mutually. It's this explosive kind of, you get together, everything is fast, it's like boom, in your face, slap in your face energy. And in the beginning, you just live on, I don't know, you are in paradise. It feels phenomenal, but then your insecurities kick in because you are so dependent on the other person. And then you start shifting who you are for the sake of keeping that person, right? You are betraying your own morals and standards. You are betraying your own desires and needs. Needs is what I wanted to say. You're betraying your own needs. You are literally giving yourself up for the sake of keeping that person. And it turns into this very toxic dynamic of usually runner chaser until it really just like, it doesn't fizzle out. It more like ends in a plane crash. It's like a really intense thing. As you may have guessed, I have experienced limerence myself. It's crazy. I think a lot of you actually have. I think I would probably go as far as to say the majority who have ever felt crazily obsessed in love with somebody and it did not work out have experienced limerence. While you are in limerence, you of course don't know it, you deny it, you think you have found your soulmate or your twin flame. This is, by the way, also where these ideas are stemming from. The idea of this is meant to be, the idea of this is my divine counterpart, the idea of the universe kind of got us together because it's the divine plan or something. You are trying to find things in your outside world to anchor this relationship into something that it's not, for the sake of reassuring you that this is real and this is meant to be, and you are the one, I don't know, special snowflake on this planet who is capable of having this. This is where the entire idea of, well, twin flames is stemming from. Sad. Not to say that limerence is not a type of love. It is, when you experience it, a form of love. When you stop experiencing it, I cannot speak today. For real. When you stop experiencing it, when you step away from it, when you're out of that bubble and you look back, you realize it was actually attachment. It was not real love. Real love, I've said this a million times before, is a little bit on the boring side. It's not this incredibly mind-blowing passion, all-consuming craziness. It is love. It's cute. It's sweet. It's easy going. And yeah, sometimes it can drive you crazy, but this, I'm really talking, when it comes to limerence, it's really massive, incredible, oh my God, Godzilla-like infatuation, dependency, attachment. You lose yourself. Usually you have the fattest, most severe heartbreak in the universe when this turns to shit, or when you have experiences, realizations, like, let's say you are in a limerence relationship in your head with a famous person, and that famous person gets married to somebody else in their actual life, and you fall apart. Or you happen to meet them and you get rejected, right? Stalking behavior comes from that as well. It's just, all in all, it's craziness. So why in the fuck do we even get this? Like, if it's such a bad thingness, why the hell are we experiencing this? Like, what's the purpose of this? Well, the purpose of this is because if you do not experience at least a small amount of infatuation with the other person, you quite frankly have no real reason to actually stay together with them. Aside from physical attraction, and we can be attracted to a whole bunch of people. Like, if it was just simply for physical attraction, I don't know about you, but if I leave the house, I do happen to see quite a lot of people that are physically attractive to me. Yet I'm not crazy about them. I don't want to spend time with them. I don't want to, I don't know, crawl into their skin and live there forever. Hello, Peppy again, right? So When you meet a person that matches you a little bit of that, like a healthy schmöll amount of infatuation and limerence is in fact actually necessary to even keep this relationship going long enough for something to develop in there. Otherwise, we would just move from one person to another, to another, to another, to another. And I mean, quite frankly, a lot of people are doing this nowadays. Hookup culture is not exactly something that is in favor of our biology. It's not something that is in favor of the urge to procreate whatsoever. Whether it's not a good thing or a bad thing, morally speaking, I don't know. I have my own opinion on that. You have your own opinion on that. We don't have to talk about this. I think it's dumb. But it's aside from that, we do need a certain amount of infatuation, because otherwise we would just trust these people and move on to the next. And that's it, right? Having no amount of infatuation feels like talking to somebody where you don't feel chemistry. I'm sure a lot of you have experienced that. You see somebody and they are incredibly physically attractive, incredibly beautiful or handsome, and then you start talking with them and you start hanging out with them and you spend time with them and you're like, it doesn't click. This not for me. Basically, every single one of your friends who is attractive looking, objectively, you look at them, you're like, oh, that is a handsome guy or this is a pretty girl, but you're actually not physically attracted to them. There is no romantic feelings. There is no spark between you. There is no urge to get naked and climb it like a tree. This is essentially what non-infatuation, platonic connections look like. And if we are in a platonic connection, there's just not enough of the juiciness going for us to keep it going in order to really build a foundation, commit to the other person, and then peppermint, come on, and then create a family and stuff like that, right? We need this at the very least in the beginning, this infatuation thing. It just is a matter of how much, how long, how intense. With limerence, we kind of forget that we have a brain, and we kind of start taking risks and making decisions for the sake of being with the other person that look very just incredibly insane to the outside world. Things like, I mentioned it earlier, leaving your family, leaving your wife or your husband, right? Leaving your job, quitting your job, moving to the other end of the world for a person that you've literally met yesterday, right? All those things, cutting off all of your friends, cutting off every single one, completely changing, taking risks that are just insane. But your brain justifies it because this is the love of my life, this is my soulmate, this is my twin flame, this is my divine counterpart, we are meant to be, this is destiny, yada, yada, yada. So this craziness, I have so much cat hair swirling around, hold on, it's everywhere. So it's this unhealthy amount of craziness and obsession with the other person. And I'm going to say this one thing again before I jump into the to the manifesting NSP thing. You are willing to change yourself for the sake of pleasing the other person, right? So you are acting for the other person, not for yourself. You do not decide for yourself, I'm going to rip my entire life apart. I'm going to give up everything so that I feel better about myself. No, you're doing all of that for the other person. When we're talking about manifesting a specific person, ideally, we have a little bit of daydreaming, right? We work on our self-concept. I need to work on my self-concept regarding peppermint. We work on how we see that person, right? We bring out our insecurities for the sake of improving them. We work on our core beliefs. We work on how we see romantic relationships in general. And then we have a few thoughts towards what we don't eat this is toxic. Shoo. A few thoughts towards what we want in the future. We can have that in form of visualizations, of affirmations, of listening to a subliminal, of daydreaming, we can meditate, we can paint a freaking picture if you like, right? But the ideal version of manifesting an SP, which is like a little bit tricky, or when you're doing it on purpose, conscious creation style, not just falling in love with somebody and then daydreaming about them and having or picturing them as perfection. But if you're actually doing it on purpose, whether it's an ex or a new person, or you're trying to get a situationship into a commitment, no matter what your situation is, ideally you work on yourself. Ideally, you use this trigger, this little bit of obsession, right? The healthy amount of obsession and infatuation and attraction and chemistry and stuff as your fuel to improve yourself, to give to yourself, and then it gets reflected back. This is the core of healthy SP manifestation. Unfortunately, the entire internet is filled with the opposite of healthy, the kind of shitty, the manifest your SP in 3 seconds, the manifest them overnight, make them obsessed with you, make them do this and blah, lose their shit. They cannot even, I don't know, write their own goddamn name without thinking about you anymore. Shit like that. And the majority of the content, material, whether it is affirmation tapes or rants or coaches, manifesting gurus telling you how to do it, blah, 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 if it's guided meditations or visualizations, the majority of the content that is offered to you online is, oh, no, no, you cannot walk across my fucking laptop. The majority of the material that you can work with online is unfortunately rooted and anchored in the wrong. So I totally 100% understand the confusion between, is there even a fucking difference between limerence, infatuation, being obsessed, being completely delusional in a fabricated, imaginative reality, which will never, ever, ever actually happen in real life, and manifesting an SP on purpose, right? I understand that because the crossover sections are incredibly strong. And I would say the majority is rooted in that, especially when we're talking about law of assumption. Not so much law of attraction here. This is the one time where I gotta say, law of attraction gets it a little bit better than law of assumption, because law of attraction has this incredible focus on high vibe. You need to feel good. And even though this can also fall into toxic positivity, of course, dualities and everything, right? But the law of attraction thing prioritizes well-being a little bit too much. But in this case, you look more into yourself. You give more shits about how do you feel on a day-to-day baseline than you give a shit about the things that you want, right? You use your desires, the things that you want, as fuel to keep going, to make your little vision boards and whatnot. But law of assumption, unfortunately, got so screwed up that the majority of shit out there is really bullshit. It's really there for you to force yourself into manifesting the other person. If you were just to chill the fuck out, drop the SP for a little bit, and ask yourself, what are my intentions behind this? Why do I even fucking want this, right? What do I want to achieve here? Why this person? Why am I in love with somebody, if it's an ex or somebody that has massively rejected you, that you've never been with before, right? Why am I in love with somebody that is not available to me? Why am I obsessing over somebody, wanting somebody that has rejected me, that is not in love with me? Why do I chase this? If you would take care of these questions to answer them honestly, and then work on these areas in terms of healing, changing your mind, improving yourself, right? Then it would be the easiest thing in the universe to get, well, frankly, anything you want. It doesn't even have to be the SP. It can be somebody better if you like that. But the stuff that is offered to you from the bigger channels, from all size, shapes, and forms, especially law of assumption, is unfortunately focusing on the other person and changing them, changing how they show up for you without giving too many shits about your self-concept. And then a lot of people, I have noticed that in the recent month or so, a lot of the general idea about manifesting has shifted more towards self-concept, and I applaud that. I think it's very nice. However, if you are working on your self-concept for the sake of getting that person, then you still have not learned it. Then you're still coming from the wrong angle, and it's still going to be either a complete shit show and it's going to be a huge amount of effort and struggle for you, or it's going to flat out not work. If you're working on your self-concept, if you're saying affirmations like, my life is perfect, I always get what I want, I'm such a queen, I'm a goddess, oh my God, I'm the upper end power, blah, 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 for the sake of getting that SP, is not going to work, because you are not authentically given the things to yourself that you hope you're going to get from the person. So this is where Limerence and SP manifestation techniques are completely the same. You are obsessed with the other person. What I said in the very beginning of this video, your own feeling, emotional state of contentment depends on the other person. You think you need them. You feel incredible anxiety. You feel loss. You feel emptiness, like a void within you. You feel like a half person without the other, right? This is exactly what happens in Limerence, and this is also exactly what happens in manifesting an SP. So the right approach is what makes the difference between Limerence and manifesting an SP. Am I working on my self-concept for the sake of me leveling up, for the sake of me wanting to feel better, for the sake of me wanting to be my best self, for the sake of me living a pleasant and nice life?